wealthy man, a dark lantern of undoubted antiquity, rendered still more interesting by being in shape and pattern extremely like such as are in use at the present day. Now this gentleman, since deceased, was at all times ready to make oath, and did again and again set forth upon his solemn asseveration that he had frequently heard his grandmother say, when contemplating this venerable relic, "Aye, aye." This was carried by my fourth son on the 5th of November, when he was at Guy Fawkes. These remarkable words wrought, as well they might, a strong impression on his mind, and he was in the habit of repeating them very often. The just interpretation which they bear, and the conclusion to which they lead, are triumphant and irresistible. The old lady, naturally strong-minded, was nevertheless frail and fading. She was notoriously subject to that confusion of ideas, or, to say the least, of speech, to which age and garrulity are liable. The very slight confusion apparent in these expressions is manifest, and it is ludicrously easy of correction. "Aye, aye," quoth she, and so it will be observed that no emendation whatever is necessary to be made in these two initiative remarks. "Aye, aye." This lantern was carried by my forefather, not fourth son, which is preposterous, on the 5th of November, and he was Guy Fawkes. Here we have a remark at once consistent, clear, natural, and in strict accordance with the character of the speaker. Indeed, the anecdote is so plainly susceptible of this meaning and no other, that it will be hardly worth recording in its original state, were it not a proof of what may be, and very often is, effected not only in historical prose, but in imaginative poetry, by the exercise of a little ingenious labour on the part of the commentator. It has been said there is no instance in modern times of a Chuzzlewit having been found on terms of intimacy with the great. But here again the sneering detractors who weave such miserable figments from their malicious brains are stricken dumb by evidence. The letters are yet in the possession of various branches of the family, in which it distinctly appears, being stated in so many words, that one Diggory Chuzzlewit was in the habit of perpetually dining with Duke Humphrey. So constantly was he a guest at that nobleman's table, indeed, and so unceasingly were his Grace's hospitality and companionship forced, as it were, upon him, that we find him uneasy, and full of constraint and reluctance, writing his friends to the effect that if they fail to do so, and by bearer, he will have no choice but to dine again with Duke Humphrey, and expressing himself in a very marked and extraordinary manner as one surfeited of high life and gracious company. It has been rumoured, and it is needless to say the rumour originated in the same base quarters, that a certain male Chuzzlewit, whose birth must be admitted to be involved in some obscurity, was of very mean and low descent. How stands the proof, when the son of that individual, to whom the secret of his father's birth was supposed to have been communicated by his father in his lifetime, lay upon his deathbed? This question was put to him in a distinct, solemn, and formal way. "Toby Chuzzlewit, who was your grandfather?" To which he, with his last breath, no less distinctly, solemnly, and formally replied, and his words were taken down at the time, and signed by 6 witnesses, each with his name and address in full, "The Lord Nozu." It may be said, it has been said, for human wickedness has no limits, that there is no Lord of that name, and that among the titles which have become extinct, none at all resembling this, in sound even, is to be discovered. But what is the irresistible inference, rejecting a theory broached by some well-meaning but mistaken persons, that this Mr. Toby Chuzzlewit's grandfather, to judge from his name, must surely have been a Mandarin, which is wholly insupportable, for there is no pretence of his grandmother ever having been out of this country, nor of any Mandarin having been in it within some years of his father's birth, except those in the tea shops, which cannot for a moment be regarded as having any bearing on the question, one way or another. Rejecting this hypothesis, it is not manifest that Mr. Toby Chuzzlewit had either received the name imperfectly from his father, or that he had forgotten it, or that he had mispronounced it, and that even at the recent period in question, the Chuzzlewits were connected by a bend sinister, or a kind of heraldic over the left, with some unknown noble and illustrious house. From documentary evidence yet preserved in the family, fact is clearly established that in the comparatively modern days of Diggory Chuzzlewit before mentioned, one of its members attained to very great wealth and influence. Throughout such fragments of his correspondence as have escaped the ravages of the moths, who in right of their extensive absorption of the contents of deeds and papers may be called the general registers of the insect world, we find him making